This is Partners in Crime with Adam Croft and Robert Dawes.
Well, hello from a sweltering and sweaty Partners in Crime studio. It's been a bit of a warm week, Bob.
It is. I got into my car and drove down the road, and looking down an open road with very little traffic because the school holidays are kicked in and everyone seems to be away. It reminded me of that shot in Lawrence of Arabia, the one with the desert and the heat coming off the desert sands, and out of that comes the most extraordinary picture. David Lean, one of the great pictures of all time. I saw a recut of it, the director's cut of it, a couple of months ago, and it's quite superb. Nothing to do with crime, unless it's political crime, which you could think that the film was based on to some degree, to a great degree, in fact. Anyway, hello, how are you?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you. We're not going to talk about political crimes this week, in the week that we anoint a new Prime Minister, but we are going to talk about some other forms of true crime, because the news articles that Moriarty has dredged up for us this week appear to be largely related to true crime. And also we have an email from a listener, from the listener, Amber Rush. Hello.
Amber Rush. Hello,
sorry
Amber.
for not getting around to you sooner. She says, hello, my family tree is mayhem. One of my great uncles knew the Cray twins and the other one blew up houses for a living. Now I work for the police. I listen to the podcast every Friday or as soon as it comes out, depending on if I'm working or not.
Wow.
I think the reference there was in me talking about having a serial killer in my... what a serial killer? A double killer.
A double killer,
Is he
yes.
a double killer if one of them was himself?
Well, he's killed two people.
He has.
So I suppose you could say that it is a double killing.
Yes, so my great-great-great-grandfather. Yes, you have to go back in the Partners in Crime archives for that one. Not going into that one again.
You're ever so slightly inordinately proud of your great double killing great-great-grandfather, aren't you?
I really shouldn't be. So yes, Amber decided to write in and let us know about her family links there to some fairly major criminals, which is always lovely to hear.
That is extraordinary. She should read Simon Michael's books about the Crays, which is set in the 60s, and she probably has already, but they're very, very good indeed. But she should start writing crime novels herself with a background like that, I think.
She should. Yes, true crime perhaps. But before we get back onto true crime, I'm going to touch on some crime fiction, or at least a dismissal of crime fiction that came about in the press this week by Colm Tóibín, who is a literary author, Irish author, as you may have guessed. He told a Guardian interviewer last weekend, he said, I can't do thrillers and I can't do spy novels. He said, I can't do any genre fiction books, really, none of them. I just get bored with the prose. I don't find any rhythm in it. It's blank, it's nothing. It's like watching TV. Which is quite odd, because he then goes on to say, I don't have a TV. Everyone talks about the golden age of American TV, but it's done nothing for me. So, make of that what you will.
Well, it did. It was a big storm on social media, as you'd expect. I saw a very strongly worded riposte to that thesis from Steve Kavanagh and several other writers, and I'm looking forward to hearing yours.
Well, do we really need to be honest?
I think we know where we stand on that, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, Marion Keyes, best-selling genre fiction writer of sorts, said, not writer of sorts, I mean genre of sorts, tweeted, says the lad who wrote a Maeve Binchy pastiche and managed to persuade people it was literary fiction. Stephen Fry wrote, I love you, Colm, but really... Try Lee Child and James Lee Burke, and John le Carre, and John le Carre, Lynn Dayton, Mick Herron and Graham Greene. A major minor writer is usually so much more rewarding than a minor major one.
Ooh, that's contentious.
Yes.
Well, there we go. Lovely. Oh, there's Steve Kavanagh there. There's responses.
Yeah, Steve Kavanagh, he responded. He said... He said, you can't dismiss all genre writing as nothing. It's the literary equivalent of hanging your ass out a car window as it passes a crowd of strangers on the street. He thinks he's being clever, but really he's just showing his ass.
Well, I said it was a strongly worded riposte.
Well, so much for genre fiction writers not having rhythm or style. That's all I can say.
So there you are. You see, you stick your head over the parapets.
Or your arse out the window.
Or your arse out the window, and that's what you can expect. Well, we've talked about this so many times on Partners, haven't we? And we know exactly where we stand, and I'm sure most of our regular listeners know exactly where we stand too.
Yeah, we don't like crime fiction, it's rubbish.
No, we love crime fiction, and we love literary fiction as well. There's room in the world for each. One doesn't need to slag off the other. You don't get many crime writers slagging off great works of literature.
No, you don't. No,
for obvious reasons, possibly. But I mean, you just don't. So it's a one-sided thing, it seems to me, and it's a great shame. I understand part of it, but I think it's wrong.
I think I probably read more literary fiction than I do crime fiction.
Do you?
So I'm quite it's always quite disappointing when
I know you're halfway through my latest, so that's probably true.
Yeah, that is not literary fiction, it is literally fiction. And the merging of the literary and the crime worlds came one step further this week when Irish author Kevin Barry was longlisted for the 2019 Booker Prize with his crime fiction novel Night Boat to Tangier. This was in the Irish Sun this week. The book, it says, tells the story of two old Irish gangsters who discuss their past as they search for a missing daughter while waiting for a boat at Moroccan port Tangier.
Wow, that sounds great.
The novel, which is set to be released on September the 17th, has been described by the Booker judges as a rogue gem of a novel and a work of crime fiction not quite like any other.
Well, there we are.
It's actually quite interesting. The whole long list has been announced. I'm not going to read it all out because most of it's fairly relevant to partners in crime, and there's at least 3 of the authors whose names I cannot pronounce.
Enid Blyton.
That's how you say it.
Yes. Well, there we go. Gosh. So.
We have. Well, there was your phone buzzing there.
You must understand, listeners, that I sit here agog to Adam's screen because I come in and the little notes and bits and pieces I bring are all quickly photocopied and brought by hand. And because this is the Starship Enterprise, the bridge of the Starship Enterprise at Crime Fic podcast, he has this marvellous screen, wall-to-wall screen, and just pops up all these articles one after the other with great professionalism.
You sit there with a stack of papers, most of which aren't in the right order.
No, well, they are in the right order at the moment, but that doesn't seem to last very long in my hands.
Well, as I mentioned, some true crime stuff in the news this week. An article that appeared in Stylist magazine over here in the UK this week started with an intriguing paragraph. Cast your mind back to December 2015. You're scrolling Twitter and a story keeps popping up.
It's a dog story.
Keeps popping up on your feed. It's been so frequently shared that you suspect for a minute that your app might be glitching. It's a story about an 18-year-old who said she was attacked at knife point, only to retract her story. The story, you then discover, doesn't just chronicle one horrifying sexual assault, but unfolds into multiple attacks by a potential serial rapist. It's so gripping, in fact, that it reads like a work of fiction, but it turns out to be true. Read that word for word, by the way, before you sue me, from Stylist magazine, who get full credit for those words. That story became...
Does that include pupping? Probably don't want credit for pupping.
They did spell popping right in their article. And that story became an unbelievable story of rape, the Pulitzer Prize winning article by T. Christian Miller and Ken Armstrong of the Marshall Project, and was the subject of the This American Life radio episode Anatomy of Doubt. Now that same story has now become the subject of an upcoming Netflix true crime series, Unbelievable. So again, it's we spoke, didn't we, about true crime becoming crime fiction. Yeah, there was a series with Martin Clunes, wasn't there, recently?
Yes, about the Teddington and where was it?
It's Millie Dowler, wasn't
Millie
it?
Dowler, yes, on Twickenham Green.
Yeah. And there's been quite a few examples of real life crimes being developed. As I say, this has been a radio episode. This has now become a Netflix true crime series. We keep coming back to the ethics, I guess, behind that, don't we? And I mean, crime fiction, you can always get away with saying, well, it's not real. These aren't real people being killed. These aren't real people doing nasty things. There's no need to worry, no need to panic. But when you then serialise or adapt real-life crimes for the fictional stage...
Well, I mean, it's used by lots of... Ian Rankin this week saw in an article in the paper that his latest book is based on a real-life true crime incident. He was also lamenting that he found that modern-day policing has become so technical and advanced, and he adds, of course, and the better for it, that the characters that he loves, the rough, tumbling sort of copper with a problem, no longer exists in the force. So a lot of crime writers, and I put myself under that, may well be writing historical fiction as regards depicting police officers in contemporary police forces. So that was an interesting point to make. But yeah, I mean, where do you draw the line between taking something that is a true life crime and then turning it into fiction?
And what of the victims and
do you
their
need
families?
to? I mean, well, exactly. I mean, that's always the most important point. But there seems to be a terrific market, certainly on television and in podcasts, for true crime stories, and the public seem to like it. Whether you think that's a good idea, I don't know.
Well, the public seems to like Boris Johnson, apparently. So,
well, yes, no, well,
we just thought we weren't going to mention him.
Well, you did. You said in this week that we have a new Prime Minister in the UK. You weren't going to mention political thrillers.
Well, then again, this goes out on Friday, so he
still
might be gone by then.
Well, what I failed to mention you is everything I'm going to say on my notes that are, as you say, in the right order for the moment, are to do with political thrillers.
Oh, good. Well, I was going to mention as well, we got to pay my son an appearance fee again this week for his...
Was that him in the background?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes. Well, there we go.
I'll beat
Well,
him
this
up
is
later.
the week that I think Peppa Pig brought out a new record.
Oh, lovely.
Have you heard that? I know he's more of a Fireman Sam sort of chap, and in fact so am I in the real world. But there we are. Well, yes. How much does he get per episode?
Ooh, more than I do.
Yeah, well, so if it's more than you get, absolutely.
Provides more entertainment value than I do.
Well, first of all, thank you, Rachel, for last week. It really is nice to know that when I'm not sitting in this seat, it is filled by someone who's better at the job than I am. A great episode. So thank you very much indeed for stepping in, as you have done in the past, and hopefully will do in the future. This week is I'm going to read something now from Vox by Matthew Quirk, who's a crime writer and political thriller writer that he wrote in 2017, and its headline is "This story is part of a group of stories called First Person." That's not the heading, no. But that's what it comes under if you want to look it up and read the whole article yourself. He says, "Let me run an idea for a novel past you. Tell me what you think. What if a reality star became president? And he could be a Russian mole. Wait, there's more. I'm going to throw in subplots about money laundering and neo-Nazis. Did I mention the Kennedy assassination conspiracy angle and the Congress member addicted to sexting who gets catfished and turns the presidential election? No, you're right. Overstuffed, incoherent, hard to believe. Sure, I'll take a knife to it. As fiction, this is all way over the top. Yet these are the real-world storylines that have been consuming our attention for the past few years. I write political thrillers, which means spinning fantastic stories about everyday headlines. But when reality becomes utterly implausible, what's left for an author to do? Why bother with thrillers when the Daily News has more shocking twists than you could sensibly fit into a work of fiction? When truth is stranger than fiction, fiction becomes more than entertainment. In the age of Trump and other political leaders, perhaps, in this week, and moments of crisis, the stories we watch and read become far more vital than simple genre diversions. That's a lot of pressure to put on an airport paperback or summer movie. Political fictions offer escape, of course, but at their best, they help us to make sense of the senseless, to order and draw lessons from chaos, to reaffirm what we stand for when it's most at risk. Well, discuss and debate.
And those words shamelessly stolen from...
Yes, I did give it Vox, Matthew Quirk.
Good.
So I gave him a full thing there, as if I could write that intelligently. I think our listeners will know the difference between my ramblings and Matthew Quirk's non-ramblings.
Well, especially if they've read your books.
Particularly if they've read my books. So what I decided to look at is classic political thrillers and how relevant they are today. And there may be some sort of solace to be gained by looking back in history and realising that things were fairly chaotic and always have been. But are they as dangerous as they seem today, or do you not think they're dangerous at all? Do you think it's ever so hopeful and positive, our new political situation, certainly in the West? So anyway, here's the list of recommendations on a top 10 list of political thrillers. And Bill Clinton and James Patterson, as many of you know, have joined forces and hopefully talents to produce The President is Missing. I've not read it yet, but it's got pretty good reviews, so that's one. House of Cards is one of the classic political thrillers of our time. Michael Dobbs turned into a television series, both sides of the Atlantic. A brilliant and a look at politics, as was perhaps.
And of course, he was a former Conservative politician as well.
It certainly is, and is in the House of Lords now, I think. Now, one of my personal favourites, historical thrillers, Manchurian Candidate. I say historical because it was written in the year that I was born, in 1959. A brilliant paranoid classic born out of the beginning of the Cold War that continues to influence people today. The fact that Homeland has a similar concept is a testament to the evergreen nature of the device. It's all about someone who is brainwashed and hypnotised into assassinating the President of the United States. And our very own John le Carré. Now, you might think of le Carré as a writer of espionage novels, but politics encompasses espionage and crime as well as lawmaking and foreign policy. His novels are as much about the secret tension between ruling and governing and the crimes committed in the name of patriotism and realpolitik as they are about skullduggery and moles in The Constant Gardener. It says here, an unremarkable man with a remarkable wife is jolted out of a mediocre political career when his spouse is killed, and he determines to find out why she was murdered. A great book, and turned into a film with Ralph Fiennes. Day of the Jackal, one of your personal favourites, and the political thriller front, again an assassination book. Tom Clancy is always up there with political thrillers. The Hunt for Red October being a great book and film. And we also have David Baldacci, who news about him coming later, whose Absolute Power is a classic political thriller. And here's one of mine. So it doesn't have to be contemporary or near contemporary to actually show insights into human nature, and certainly when involved with politics and power struggles. One of the greatest books I've ever read is I, Claudius by Robert Graves. A historical novel, true, but also a razor-sharp story of political manoeuvring in ancient Rome that involves not just murder and conspiracy, but also leverage, fake news, real policy, and power brokers. It's a fantastic book and was, again, turned into a most brilliant television series by the BBC in the 1970s, with Sir Derek Jacobi playing Claudius. And lastly on this list, we have one of my favourite writers, Robert Harris, his book The Ghost Writer, and I've just finished reading one of his latest books, Munich, which is all about appeasement and the build-up to the Second World War.
Very good, isn't it?
And it's brilliant and is very much a political thriller in its own right. I think he's absolutely terrific. But The Ghost Writer, Harris's novel, is a masterclass in tension. Former British Prime Minister Adam Lang is very late in turning his memoir into his publisher, in part because his longtime collaborator and assistant has died in a terrible accident. To get the book back on schedule, a professional ghostwriter is hired to complete the manuscript. The ghostwriter struggles to figure out what's true and what's not so true in Lang's notes, and then stumbles on evidence that implies the dead collaborator was actually murdered. A terrific book turned into a film with Pierce Brosnan. Anyway, so they're classic, just a list of some of the great classic political thrillers, but who's writing them now in this country? One I've read recently, which is terrific, I think, is Andrew Marr, his Head of State, which is very contemporary. Two Corpses.
I've got it over there somewhere.
A country on the edge of a political precipice, a conspiracy so bold it would make Machiavelli wince. When a young investigative reporter is found dead on the streets of London, few people notice, but when another body, minus its head and hands, is washed up on the banks of the Thames, its grisly condition arouses a little more interest. There appears to be no connection between the two dead men, but unsuspected by the electorate, there is a shocking and dangerous secret at the very heart of government. While the United Kingdom approaches a crucial and delicately balanced referendum on Europe, a group of ruthlessly determined individuals will stop at nothing, including murder, to prevent the truth from getting out. Andrew Marr's first novel is a gleefully twisted spin through the corridors of power, making full use of his unrivalled inside knowledge of the British political scene. Marr has threaded his wickedly clever thriller with a distinctive strand of pitch-black humour to offer an irreverent glimpse behind the parliamentary curtain. There we are. We're not going to mention political thrillers this week, but...
I am, actually, because Head of State I've read and loved. I have it here in my hands. And the follow-up, Children of the Master, was also a very intriguing read. The second Andrew Marr political thriller. I'll read from the back. We've got another 10 minutes to waste. Why not? The Prime Minister's days are numbered. The Master, a shadowy figure from his party's past, plans to replace him with someone he can manipulate to his own ends. But who will he choose? Two candidates stand out: David Petrie, a handsome self-made Scot with a troubled personal history, and Caroline Phillips, a high-flying Londoner whose unconventional private life could make or break her. Against a backdrop of intrigue and betrayal at Westminster, these two must play the Master at his own game if they are to seize the greatest political prize of all. I figured that was worth mentioning, actually, what with, as you say, new Prime Minister this week.
It's all there, and Andrew Marr's writing it. Interesting that I think Tom Bradby, who's the newscaster in the UK, for ITV, has brought out a political thriller as well. So it seems that our broadcasters and presenters are sort of turning their hand at political crime thrillers as well. An interesting point. It seems to me, you look down that list, there are no women writers writing political thrillers that are on the lists at all. And that occurred to me that it seems to me that when women writers choose to deal with politics, they deal with it from the emotional point of view. We gave a review to Sarah Vaughan's excellent Anatomy of Scandal, and I think to some degree women writers don't tend to go for the political situation, the power struggles, the detail of politics. They tend to go for the emotional and relationship point of view, as Sarah Vaughan has done so brilliantly in Anatomy of a Scandal.
Well, I think the only one I can think of is Stella Rimington.
Stella Rimington, yes.
Who, of course, was a former head of MI5.
Yeah.
So, he is well versed in that male world, and I guess knows it from that point of view. It's a very, very male dominated world, I suppose, in MI5. So that's the only kind of woman I can think of who writes those, as you say.
Well, I'd be interested to listen to if anyone's got any ideas about that. But I mean, I'll just give another punch for Anatomy of Scandal, which is about a high-profile marriage thrust into the spotlight. A wife determined to keep her family safe must face a prosecutor who believes justice has been a long time coming. A scandal that will rock Westminster and the woman caught at the heart of it. Anatomy of Scandal centres on a high-profile marriage, a political marriage, that begins to unravel when the husband is accused of a terrible crime. Sophie is sure her husband James is innocent and desperately hopes to protect her precious family from the lies which might ruin them. Kate is the barrister who will prosecute the case. She is equally certain that James is guilty and determined he will pay for his crimes. A compulsive read with completely layered characters. Superb, says John Byrne, and lots of other extraordinarily fine reviews. People are calling it the new Apple Tree Yard. That's another book set with a political background, but I'd beg to differ. Fast, pacey, and with enough twists and turns to keep you gripped right to the end. I'd argue it's infinitely better, says the Pool. So that's interesting. So that we have Sarah taking it from a completely different point of view, the catastrophic cost that can come with political life, and in this particular case, the men who wield power and think they can get away with doing pretty much what they want. That's a fairly topical point of view, I would have thought, throughout the world.
It certainly is.
So, yes, there we are. That's Partners in Crime's quick view of political thriller. And in this week where we have a new government, and in America where all sorts of things are happening in Congress and whatever, and our political climate seems to be highly fraught, certainly more charged than I can remember it being for a few decades, if ever, or maybe we just forget very quickly, and you just have to look to history maybe a little more and realise that things were always pretty much the same, and I'm sure that's true too.
As long as we look to history and don't repeat our mistakes, that's the main thing. Yes, if you liked the sound of those books, you can head over to kobo.com, and if you've not used them before, you can use the promo code CRIME at the checkout. They'll give you 90% off. Or if you use the promo code PARTNERS, if you're already an existing Kobo customer, then you'll get 40% off of your ebook purchases moving forward. You don't need an e-reader or any particular device, although they are very, very good. You can download the free Kobo app for your phone or tablet. Now, I'm extremely warm.
It is quite warm, actually. It's going to be 36, they say. That's tomorrow. But here in your darkened studio without air conditioning,
it's at least 93.
The coffee's hot, which is fine. There's no building across the road this week.
Not this week.
No, you see,
no, not this week.
No rear view picture of. Do you sit here actually looking across and imagining what's going on in your neighbour's world, like a rear
window? Yeah.
You sit and going, what skullduggery is going on? I bet they're having their entire back garden redesigned.
Yeah, I watch them as they winch their little dog up the drain pipe.
There goes the lining to the pond. Oh, there goes a little gnome statue with a fishing rod. All these suburban fantasies, and goodness knows there are enough. Well, you've written several excellent ones yourself. Suburban mysteries and imagined crimes that either come true or they don't. This is the
there's a little insight into my world and my working day.
Domestic noir. Do you enjoy writing domestic noir?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
But now you're writing big thrillers. It's quite a jump.
Yeah. Well, we've done domestic noir, we've done political thrillers, and I guess that's...
You've done Golden Age. Yes.
Just making my way through, really, and trying to find one that I'm actually quite good at.
Well, they spoke
keep trying.
very well of you at Beacon Lit the other Saturday, and wouldn't listen to a word I said.
No.
But
I did tell them not to.
A very nice literary festival over there, it has to be said.
Yes, and of course in September we're going to be appearing at Morecambe and Vice doing Partners in Crime Live. We'll give you more details on that in a show or two's time, so that you can book your tickets. You can come and watch us as we record in front of a live studio audience, and hopefully have a lot of fun. So until then, I'm going to go and lie down in a bath of ice. Have you got any plans to cool down?
What am I going to call it? No, I'm going to go shopping. No bath of ice for me. You can tell he's a crime writer, can't you? He was discovered in a bath of ice. In fact, I was reading a book, a sort of blurb on a book about...
Must have been killed fairly recently, then.
About a body that was actually just kept in a bath full of ice to preserve it. I hope the same fate doesn't befall you in your attempts to avoid heat rash.
Well, I had a birthday recently, so I am approaching the need for preservation.
Yes. Well, for all of us in the UK and anyone else who's worldwide listening and is in the midst of a heat wave and thinking to themselves, global warming, does it really exist? It certainly is existing in your back garden, but we wish you well. Don't forget to slap the old factor 50 on if you've got it, and have perfect tans. It's that wonderful Neil Simon line about tans. It's from California Suite, where there's a couple who've divorced and they meet up on the beach at Santa Monica after a few years, and the woman says, you're looking well, perfect tan as normal, even behind your ears. How do you do that? And the guy says, I just put the top of the car down and drive away from the sun.
And on that note,
Partners in Crime was presented by Adam Croft and Robert Dawes and produced by Adam Croft. The theme tune was by the Caesareans. The Partners in Crime logo and imagery were designed by Stuart Bache. Partners in Crime is sponsored by Kobo, your favourite local bookshop, perfected.